Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm sharing a project using the interactive theater fold frame, theater fold flaps, and coordinating products. Interactive cards are not only fun to make, but they delight the recipient in so many ways. Let's take a look at the new products I'll be using in this video. The first one is the theater fold frame die. This comes with 3 parts, including the frame with notches for the pull, a split window with stitching details, and 2 bands with score lines. Also available are theater fold flaps, available in toffee and sugar cube. Each pack will come with 5 bases and 10 flaps, because you'll need 2 flaps for each base. If you buy the die, it's convenient to have these pre-cut bases and flaps, but they're not necessary. Since the die is sized for an A2 card, you can definitely cut and score your own bases and flaps. I personally recommend getting them to start, and then you can decide how you want to make your future theater fold cards. Let me quickly show you what an assembled theater fold card in toffee looks like. It's so much fun, and I can't stop pulling it open. It's very sturdy, and I'm pulling on it repeatedly and quite hard, and there's no sign of tearing. It's so well designed, and I'm excited to make a bunch for friends and family. These are just 2 of the 3 Oh My Word stamp sets, which are sized to coordinate with the theater fold frame die. The big scripted sentiments fit inside the main window, which splits apart when pulled. The sentiment itself has its own die cut, but I won't be using it in my project. It's just another possibility in your design, whether you use it with a theater fold concept or not. Next up is the Bitty Borders stamp set, which is filled with the most adorable images that go with all 3 of the Oh My Word sentiment sets. As you can see, there are coordinating dies which make it easy to pop 1 or 2 of these images inside the theater fold frame. Let's get started on this interactive card. I've die cut the theater fold frame using all 3 pieces of the die, and you get 5 pieces once it's cut. Inside the window you get 2 pieces since there's a line going down the center of the window. This is what allows that big scripty sentiment to be pulled apart in the interactive element. I'm also going to grab 1 pre-cut base and 2 pre-cut flaps. Please note that you can make this theater fold card in so many ways, and you can do some of the steps in a different order than how I'm showing you in this video. Even watching myself again, I can tell that I'd be doing it differently the next time. There is no right or wrong way, just maybe a slower way and a faster way. The first thing I'm going to do is apply 1/4 inch score tape to the little flaps at both ends of these straps. Keep in mind that this card design is horizontal. You want to center these flaps between the top and bottom of the window, but it must be flush with the edge of the window. Don't worry that it's covering up a bit of the thumb pull. Once the flaps are inserted into the straps from the back, you won't see the straps. I will repeat the process with the second strap and then use a bone folder to score the lines on the 2 pre-cut flaps. It's important to fold them both in the same direction. Now I'll apply 1/2 inch score tape to the outer quarter of these flaps. You can use liquid glue, but you'll have to apply it right to the edge and then wait for it to dry in order to ensure its strength. I wouldn't recommend using just a tape runner, as I don't believe that's strong enough for either the straps or the flaps. Once the 2 flaps are secured to the base, they will meet in the center, and you'll notice that there's a 1/8 gap at both the top and bottom of the flaps. This space will be covered by the theater fold frame once those flaps are inserted into the straps. Now I'm going to use the rectangle masking stencil and cloud stencils to create my background on the base and 1/4 of both flaps. I've taped down my base using a rolled up piece of washi tape, and I've secured the large rectangle masking stencil on top. I'm using one of the cloud stencils with a coordinating blender brush and sprinkles ink to create my scene. I create 4 layers of clouds and do a little bit of ink blending at the base of the rectangle frame before removing it. Since this background will be continued on the side flaps, or the wings of a theater, as this die is aptly named, I have to continue those clouds there or it would look weird. I use pieces of masking paper to protect the other areas of the flaps, including the fold lines where ink might accumulate and appear too dark as I'm ink blending. As you can see, I try to match up the clouds as best I can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It does look a little troublesome, but it was worth it to get that whole 3D scene inside the theater fold. Once done, you can see how amazing it will look once those flaps are secured. Now I'll stamp the 2 images from Bitty Borders and color them with Copic markers. I stamped them with Oreo ink on sugar cube cardstock, and I'm going to speed through the coloring process 20 times and put on some music. After the images are die cut and I stack them, I realized that I wanted the bow on the left behind the giraffe to be blue. To make this correction, I used the colorless blender to remove the gray ink and recolor it in blue. This won't always work, especially if you use a dark color like red or purple, but I'm glad I was able to make this quick change here. When I place the images on the background, I choose my secondary sentiment, which reads, "May all your wishes come true," and then I place the base in my Mini Misty stamping tool and stamp that sentiment in Oreo ink. I use a piece of acetate to make sure it's straight before doing the final stamping. Now I'm going to stamp the big "Oh my word, happy birthday." Given the orientation of the theater fold frame die, I should have turned this stamp 90 degrees on this panel, but lucky for me it worked out okay, and there was enough space around it for the die to cut the split window. First, I stamp the sentiment with Oreo ink, but then I decide that I want it to be sparkly for more impact, so I use watermark ink on top of the Oreo and heat emboss it with black glitter embossing powder from my stash. I also decide to add another sentiment beneath it, and this is partly because I had to shift the die down so that the die would cut the sentiment. It was a little off-centered due to spacing issues. Had it not worked out, I would have just re-stamped the sentiment horizontally on a new panel. After I use the theater fold frame die to cut the sentiment, this is what it looks like. Now I can start to assemble the card, first with the two flaps. I remove the release paper from the score tape on that outer quarter of the flaps. I just make sure to keep that adhesive lifted until I'm sure the flaps are positioned exactly where I want them, which is centered from top to bottom and also touching but not overlapping in the center. Trust me, it's not hard and not scary either. I bring in the frame so I can position the images in the center of the scene. Since I'm stacking images, I decide to die cut shadows from black glitter cardstock. Holding up the black die cut gives me another idea of using it as an audience in the foreground for another card. Then I slide the flaps into the straps and test out the interactive element. I use a skeleton clip to hold one of the flaps while I insert the other. Once both flaps are inserted, I line up the frame and clip all the layers together in the center. I use a tape runner to attach the split window sentiment. I just love how perfectly everything lines up. It looks amazing, doesn't it? Looking at this though, it's too white, so I recut the frame in Sprinkles cardstock and use liquid glue to secure it to the original frame. I could have just die cut extra straps and used just one layer of the frame, but there's no harm in making it extra sturdy. At this point, I decide that it needs one more change. The white frame I pull on is too bland, so I use my trimmer to cut a 4" by 5½ piece of candy corn cardstock. I use the cast-off window pieces from the Sprinkles frame and use a pencil to trace the insert since I won't be needing it. Since the sentiment is already adhered, I just want enough of the frame to slide in underneath the edges of the sentiment panels. I carefully use my trimmer to cut out the center, erase the pencil lines, and use liquid glue to attach the frames onto the pull flaps. Now, this is obviously not the best way to do this, and now that you've seen the results of my afterthought, you can plan and prepare for this better. Keep in mind that there are now 2 layers of the flap, and it still fits through the straps. I do like how much sturdier it feels, and it also helps keep the card open. This is great if the recipient wants to leave the theater in the open position for display on the mantle. I also love that the colored frame shows up in the cutouts for the thumb. I just love the finished results. Let me show you how it fits into a regular envelope. Since I have extra layers in the images, the frame, and the flaps, it's bulkier than it would be without those layers. Still, it fits into an A2 envelope, and you just have to be careful when pushing the top of the pull tabs past the edge of the envelope. It's easier to flip the card over and slide it with the back facing you so that the tabs don't get caught. I just love this interactive theater fold concept and can't wait to see what you come up with. You can find all of these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.